So, when McTominay joined Napoli in the summer of 2024, no one could have predicted that he would lead Napoli to their 4th ever Serie A title. In just one season, he became the heartbeat of Naples, defying all expectations and leaving his mark on Italian football history. And guess what? He wasn't even Napoli's first choice, but we'll get to that later. The question for now is, how did a squad player at Manchester United become an icon in Naples? Before we get into that, we need to find out how he got there. Scott McTominay wasn't always the dominant force in midfield that we know today. In fact, the journey to becoming the engine of Napoli started in the youth ranks of Manchester United, a club known for its rigorous development system and unforgiving standards. Go back to 2001, McTominay was just 5 years old when he joined United's academy after showing early promise at a local development centre in Preston. Now here's where it gets interesting. From day one, McTominay wasn't the most naturally gifted player on the pitch. He didn't have the flashy footwork or the silky dribbling skills that many of his peers displayed. But what he had was something far rarer, a tireless work ethic and the type of mentality that could turn a promising player into something special. By the time he was 15, McTominay had already made a name for himself as a versatile player, willing to do whatever it took for the team. But here's the thing, he wasn't playing in his most natural position. McTominay had always been a central midfielder, but there was a shortage of out-and-out forwards in the academy. So what did he do? He stepped up, played in attack, and showed that no matter where he was on the field, he could be relied on. Fast forward a bit, and McTominay's rise wasn't without its bumps. Between 2013 and 2015, he made just 7 appearances for United's under-18s. At the time, he struggled with his size, often finding himself up against players who were more physically developed. However, then came the growth spurt. McTominay shot up 14 inches in just 2 years. Suddenly, this lanky midfielder wasn't just a scrappy player who hustled his way through games. He was starting to develop the physical attributes needed to thrive at the top level. Yet, it wasn't until 2016-17 that McTominay truly began to show his potential. It all began with Jose Mourinho giving McTominay his first real taste of senior football. It wasn't some insignificant cup match against the lower league team. No, McTominay's Premier League debut came in a massive game against Arsenal at Old Trafford. It wasn't a flawless performance, but it was gritty, it was confident, and it had one thing that always set him apart: the work rate. Mourinho, known for his sharp eye for talent, couldn't ignore that. And by the end of the season, it wasn't just his debut that had people talking. McTominay went on to make 17 appearances in all competitions, proving he wasn't just there to make up the numbers. Against top teams like Chelsea, Tottenham and Liverpool, he wasn't fazed. Every match he played, whether it was a crucial league game or a cup tie, McTominay showed why he was earning more and more trust from Mourinho. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't taking the spotlight, but he was doing the dirty work, the hard tackles, the interceptions, the simple passes that kept United ticking. He wasn't going to be the player stealing the headlines, well not yet anyway, but he was becoming one of the most reliable men on the pitch. Sure, he had his struggles, he wasn't perfect, but that's the nature of being a young player at a club like Manchester United. You're not just playing against other teams, you're also battling against expectations, and we all know the pressure of playing for a club of that size is massive. And McTominay handled it with a quiet confidence that spoke volumes about his mentality. He wasn't getting ahead of himself, he wasn't trying to be something he wasn't. Instead he focused on what he could control, working hard, improving with every game, and proving that he could compete with some of the best midfielders in the world, which we'll get to later. When the 2018-19 season kicked off, it wasn't smooth sailing for McTominay. The club had big names in midfield such as Pogba, Matic and Herrera, and at first it seemed like McTominay would have to be the one to fight for his place. However, over the course of the season, McTominay earned more and more minutes in the starting lineup, becoming a key figure in United's midfield. His ability to read the game, to track back and defend, became one of his trademarks, and by the end of the season he was becoming a player United could rely on. Fast forward a little bit, and by the end of the 2020-21 season, McTominay was no longer just the guy who was holding things together in the midfield. He was starting to take control. With Bruno Fernandes joining the squad and adding more creativity to the midfield, McTominay's role became even more defined. He was there to be the anchor. His role was to shield the defence, win the ball back, and allow more attacking players to do their thing. And in that role, he excelled. McTominay was becoming a mainstay in the team, starting nearly every game and becoming one of Solskjaer's most trusted players. But let's not sugarcoat everything, cracks started to appear. McTominay found himself at the heart of a midfield that lacked consistency. United were never far from a crisis during this period. They could go from looking like title contenders to falling short in big moments. The midfield, despite the presence of key players like Bruno Fernandes and Paul Pogba, struggled to impose itself on games, and McTominay was often left to carry the weight of the defensive responsibilities. There were matches where he would have to shoulder much of the defensive load, breaking up opposition attacks while trying to spark something going forward. It wasn't an easy task for McTominay, as the balance in midfield wasn't always right. He was a player who was asked to fill multiple roles: defender, deep line playmaker, and box-to-box midfielder. Yet his ability to control the tempo of the game remained inconsistent. At times, the team's defensive frailties meant McTominay was left exposed. While he could battle and win the ball back, the team's lack of structure and protection meant McTominay often found himself fighting multiple battles at once. There were moments where he'd show flashes of brilliance, like his famous goals against Leeds and Manchester City, but they were few and far between in a season marked by inconsistencies. There was a sense that he had to prove himself further, especially with United's ambition of challenging for top honours. But amid all the drama at Old Trafford, McTominay's performances were occasionally overshadowed by the bigger names around him. The team wasn't functioning as it should, and McTominay often found himself caught between trying to solidify the midfield and managing the team's collective dysfunction. His development stalled at times, not for lack of ability, but because the team as a whole couldn't find the right formula for success. The 2021-22 season put more of the same. United's performances were erratic under Solskjaer, and when Ralf Rangnick took over as interim manager, things didn't improve as expected. McTominay, despite his work ethic and reliability, continued to face the same challenge, being part of a system that wasn't functioning at its best. His individual progress was at a crossroads. He was increasingly being asked to adapt his game, pushing forward more often, but he wasn't quite the player to dictate play in the way United needed in big games. Despite his efforts, McTominay found himself more frequently in the background, often part of a midfield that was struggling to click. As United entered the 2022-23 season under Erik ten Hag, the team was hoping for a fresh start, but the problems from previous seasons didn't vanish overnight. McTominay had his fair share of moments, but even with the promise of a new system, United's midfield remained an area of concern. For McTominay, it felt like the pressure to perform never let up. He was still a key squad player, but the constant change in tactics and the growing demands of the Premier League made it tough for him to show the consistency he craved. The same work rate, leadership, and defensive discipline he'd built his reputation on was still evident, but it became clear that United's struggles in midfield were limiting his potential. By 2024, McTominay's time at Manchester United reached an impasse. The 2023-24 season saw him pushed further into the background, as United's midfield continued to evolve under Ten Hag's leadership, or lack of so to say. McTominay had become a squad player, a dependable option, but one who wasn't given the consistent run of games needed to truly shine. With the arrival of new signings and the constant focus on competing at the highest level, McTominay knew his time at United had come to an end. Despite the ups and downs, he had given everything for the club, but the chance for a fresh start was now more appealing than ever. Scott McTominay's move to Napoli in the summer 2024 marked the start of a new chapter. After years of playing in Manchester United's shadow, McTominay was looking for a fresh challenge. Leaving the club where he'd spent his entire career, he took a leap of faith, choosing Italy as his new home. At first there was uncertainty, both for McTominay and Napoli. In fact, listen to this. Napoli had originally set their sights on signing Frosinone's Marco Brescianini, and McTominay's move almost didn't happen. However, the deal for Brescianini fell through, and Napoli quickly turned to McTominay. It was a sliding doors moment for both the club and the player, one that turned out to be perfect for both parties. From the very first match, McTominay settled in like he'd always been part of the squad. Under Antonio Conte, who had taken charge that summer, McTominay found himself in a more attacking midfield role than he had been accustomed to at United. This new freedom allowed him to express himself in ways he never could before. It didn't take long for his qualities to shine through. He was becoming a dynamic force, scoring goals, setting up attacks, and showing Napoli fans exactly why he was worth the investment. In fact, it was McTominay's role under Conte that was critical to Napoli's success. Conte's system allowed McTominay to thrive as a more attacking midfielder, giving him the license to push forward and make his presence felt in the final third. He became one of Serie A's top scorers from midfield, scoring 12 goals and adding another in the Coppa Italia. He was scoring crucial goals. In fact, 8 of his 12 goals have come with a score at 0-0, including a fantastic acrobatic volley against Cagliari on the final day of the season. That goal would go down in history as a defining moment. With Napoli needing the win to secure the Serie A title, McTominay's contribution was vital. Lukaku added a second to seal the victory, ensuring Napoli held off Inter Milan to claim their 4th ever Serie A title. When the final whistle blew, Napoli fans erupted in celebration. McTominay, overwhelmed with emotion, collapsed to the ground in tears. It was clear that this victory meant everything to him. Not only had he helped Napoli lift the trophy, but he had become a symbol of their triumph. Shortly after the win, McTominay was named Serie A's most valuable player for the 2024-25 season, a well-deserved recognition for his stand-up performances throughout the campaign. Leaving Manchester United for a new country was always going to be a brave move, but McTominay had no regrets. The decision looked more inspired with each passing game. In just one season, he'd become a hero in Naples. Fans showed their love in many ways: flags, tattoos, and even a shrine dedicated to him. McTominay had embraced the city, its culture, and its people. He quickly became a fan favourite, not only because of his talent, but because of his genuine love for the club and the supporters. In a city where heroes are revered like gods, McTominay quickly earned his place in Napoli folklore. His nickname, McFratm, which is McBro in Neapolitan slang, captured the affection fans had for him. He wasn't just scoring goals, he was leading by example, showing intensity, passion, and sacrifice in every match. By the end of the season, McTominay had more than proven himself. He had played a key role in Napoli's Serie A title win, and his legacy in Naples was already being cemented. McTominay wasn't just a player who had helped his team to glory. He was now a legend in a city that treated its heroes like royalty. Just look at how their fans treat Maradona. And as the celebrations continued and the Serie A season concluded, two things were clear. One, McTominay had made the right choice in coming to Naples, and two, he wasn't the only superstar in Serie A that season. So you should click on the video on the screen if you want to find out the making of another underrated talent in Serie A.